I'm Michaela Paukner, Managing Editor at No-Till Farmer. I'm here in Osceola, Arkansas, standing in front of a cotton field. This is one of the stops on the Conservation Technology Information Center's annual Conservation in Action Tour. Welcome to Conservation Ag Update.
Conservation Ag Update is brought to you by Martin Till. Thanks, Michaela, for that introduction, and welcome to the show. Technology editor Noah Newman here. Yeah, so during the Conservation in Action Tour, 125 farmers, educators, and stakeholders saw firsthand that conservation ag means more than just no-till in Northeast Arkansas. The importance of water management was on full display as attendees toured Scott Matthews' farm, and he precision levels his rice fields and uses this long plastic tube with holes to flood those rice fields. Managing editor Michaela Paukner caught up with another farmer who struggles to make no-till work in the region, and she also spoke with a tour goer from Wisconsin for his biggest eye-opener from the trip.
In our heavy clay soils here with the levee system, it doesn't allow us to rotate seamlessly into soybeans that are furrow irrigated. And so with this row rise system, it opens that door, and we have done a lot of it the last several years of no-till soybeans, in behind rice. But what we found on our operation and our soil type, like I said, probably 8 years, 10 years of trying it, is that over the years it is not as profitable for us as what the conventional rebedding the fields for the soybeans. Without some kind of program to incentivize it. So it is doable. We can make a crop that way, but without a program to incentivize the no-till or the cover crops, it is not the most profitable for our operation.
Those people that are involved in rice production have a real difficult time finding ways for cover crops to benefit them. And part of it's the geography, the soil type, and part of it's just the growing the growing season as it relates to rice production. They don't have a lot of opportunity. I'm very, very confident that if they could find the right species to utilize, I think they could still benefit from some of those soil quality benefits from cover crops. However, when they have to flood the rice paddy, it really limits the choices they have. There are very few species that can survive living underwater.
Interesting perspective there. Arkansas produces nearly 50% of U.S. rice, and as Michaela found out on the tour, growing rice isn't conducive to many of those core conservation practices that we're familiar with here in the Corn Belt. Moving on, Jim Studi has been tracking weather data for 30 years on his farm in East Troy, Wisconsin. He says he's seen the 2 wettest years, the 2 driest years, and 3 consecutive years of early and mid-season drought, all within the past 6 years. Crazy stuff. Sounds like a perfect opportunity to discuss ways to weatherproof your farm, which was the theme of this field day hosted by Studi last week. Local farmers interested in learning more about conservation practices got a crash course on planting green.
Planting green is planting into the standing crop and then terminating when appropriate. And that's based on soil moisture. And we're going to talk about how I manage it here in a moment. The beautiful thing about that green rooted vegetation is it keeps all the appliances bolted on our planters to help us no-till. So we've got the residue management system up front, the closing wheels back. It keeps the soil from building up, even if the soil's a little tacky on the front. So in conventional no-till, that's something we need to be concerned about. And that was one of the pitfalls of early equipment, was the buildup of the soil.
Always great to hear from Jim. All right now let's send it out to Associate Editor McCain Vogel on the East Coast with today's Cover Crop Connection.
McCain Vogel here with this week's Cover Crop Connection. As you can see, we're at the birthplace of the tillage radish. Yes, I'm on Steve Groff's farm in Holtwood, Pennsylvania. And speaking of which, we're going to toss it off to Steve right now for some cover crop action.
So in 1995, I was at the National No-Till Conference and heard Frankie Dijkstra from Brazil talk about how he was rolling cover crops. And I'd heard about him before, so I was really excited to meet him, that he was coming to the to the conference that year and was able to talk to him. And I came home from the no-till conference, and I literally had barrels set up. I was going to weld angle irons on them, and I was going to put rods through and fill them with concrete, because that was some of the ways that I had seen some of the pictures they had done in Brazil. And I literally was starting to do that, starting to manufacture that, or starting to make it and everything. And then I happened to see in a farm magazine that there was a device called a rolling stalk chopper made by Buffalo out of Nebraska that was designed to go in the spring in corn stalks and chew up the corn stalks a little bit, fluff up the soil. Kind of like what we know as vertical tillage today, but not with discs, but more with these blades. And I thought, that might be a way that we could use to roll the cover crops, because you have these, crimping action here. And so I called the company up, and they said, well, that's an interesting idea. We've never shipped any of these things east of the Mississippi before, but we do have a dealer for some of our other equipment in your area. So long story short, they said, we'll ship it east, and if you like it, you can buy it. If you don't like it, ship it back. Fair enough. So I got it here, and when it came stock, everything was mounted directly on the bottom of these 7x7 frame. But I made 2 rounds of my cover crops, and I called them up and said, I'm going to buy it. So I was convinced immediately. And I was going into rye, it was 3 or 4 feet tall at that time. And so we bought it, but we had problems.
And there we have it from Cedar Meadow Farm in Holtwood, Pennsylvania. That's all for this week's Cover Crop Connection. Until next time, back to you, Noah.
Thank you very much, McCain. Interesting stuff there, as always. A recent University of Kansas study adds some empirical evidence to the wisdom of crop rotations, showing the diverse row crops in rotation help keep soil-borne pathogens under control. Jim Beaver was the lead scientist on the project and shares some key takeaways with our Dan Crummett.
Well, what seems to be going on in the root zone of crops planted for biodiversity versus those in a monocrop culture?
Yeah, plant roots interact with thousands of kinds of microbes. Some are beneficial and some are pathogenic. In monocultures, pathogens accumulate that consume that plant, and the net effect tilts negative. This is because the crop is dealing with the pathogens that accumulate on its own roots, as well as getting pathogens from its neighbor. So in polycultures, the neighboring plant is a different species, and the crop is likely to be immune to the pathogens that from its neighbor. And while it's still benefiting from the beneficial microbes. So the net effect is positive.
And check out Dan's in-depth article about the study on no-tillfarmer.com. We included a link in the web article for this episode. All right, let's fire up the video of the week. This one comes to us from Carlisle County, Kentucky. Brad Reddick reflects on his switch to no-till, and his son Joel explains why they're playing small ball with cover crops.
In 2018, we did a total about-face with our farming practices. The first step for us was going from no-till farming to cover crop farming. We really put a lot of emphasis on the cover crop, and it's essentially as important as the cash crop.
A lot of people like home runs, but there's more than one way to win at baseball, and we prefer a base hit strategy. And the cover crops and our overall management system allows us to get base hits more often, and ultimately that gets more wins for us. Financially, it helps our land. So it's very important for us to have that base hit mentality rather than a home run mentality.
The Reddicks received the Leopold Conservation Award in 2022 for their conservation efforts. And that'll wrap things up. Send your story ideas my way. Here's my email address, newman@lestermedia.com. Thanks so much for spending part of your busy day here with us on Conservation Ag Update. We'll see you next time.